You know exactly what you need to do. You've known for weeks and you still haven't done it. I'm not talking about laziness. I'm not talking about a lack of motivation. The founders and operators that I work with, they're some of the most driven, disciplined people that you will find. And they still find themselves staring at the same undone priorities week after week, watching their execution fall short of what they know they're capable of. I'm Jesse Hoffman. I'm a performance coach, founder of the Clarity Code. I work with 6, 7, and 8-figure entrepreneurs across 4 continents, helping them to scale their businesses and break through their ceilings by improving their internal performance systems first, not just their business strategies. I want to talk about action consistency, the A in my CLEAR framework. Today I'm going to show you in detail why the gap between what you plan and what you execute keeps showing up, why it tends to happen at the same types of tasks or the same points in the week or under the same emotional conditions. At the end of the day, our brains are pattern recognition machines. The patterns are always there, but most people never take the time to turn that tool on and read them. We love familiarity. We love predictability. What if real discipline didn't even look like whether or not you took the action, but discipline happened proactively in the way that you can analyze and understand when you're more or less likely to actually follow through, or what the conditions are that lead you to or away from follow through. And on the note of discipline, this is where a lot of people get this wrong. Most people treat execution gaps as a motivation problem or a willpower problem. And so people think that they can just put a patch on it to say, well, you don't need that, just use discipline. So they try to push harder and add accountability and tighten up the schedule. Maybe if they're lucky, that gap closes for a few weeks, but then it reopens. And so what people are truly missing is that the gap is structural. It's not motivational. People have the motive to want to act, but there's no structure behind it. And so it lives right in that relationship between the goal, the identity behind it, and the conditions underneath which the execution is being attempted. Because at the end of the day, despite what all the grind culture, hustle, drill sergeant gurus out there want to tell you, you cannot willpower your way past a structural, fundamental misalignment. The only thing you can do is address that head on by understanding exactly where and why certain patterns break down. And so there are 3 specific places where consistency breaks down. And I just mentioned the first, which is structural misalignment. You experience it when the goal is clear, but it's not connected to an underlying role or value that you genuinely consider yours. And so the execution starts off strong when you have high motivation, but it starts to stall the moment you start to require sustained effort because there's no external reward. And because there's no intrinsic reward to make up for it, you fall flat. Motivation actually outlasts discipline. Discipline is just used as a fire starter for it. When it's intrinsic, when it's tied to an underlying structure, values, roles, goals, identity, well, then you have a shot. And speaking of identity, the second place that action consistency breaks down is in an identity mismatch. It's when the action required belongs to a version of you that you haven't fully stepped into yet. And so every time you approach it, the gap between who you currently are and who the task requires you to be creates some friction. And one clear example I've used before is if I said, here are cigarettes, you're not allowed to smoke them. And that abstinence is the action we're talking about here. You wouldn't feel any friction towards not doing it because you are not a smoker. That's not a part of your identity. And so the same goes on the flip side. If I were to say, hey, you need to go and do this thing, but you don't see yourself as someone that can go and do that thing, chances are there's going to be more friction than not. And so this third area where action consistency breaks down is as a result of the timing and state in which you try to execute that action. And that's when a certain task or number of tasks keeps showing up when you're in the wrong state for it. You don't have the amount of cognitive or physical energy to execute on it. And that's usually due to a mismanagement of energy, not a mismanagement of time. The clock's going to keep ticking. It's how do you manage your energy and understand your rhythms to try to execute on certain things at optimal times. I go into this way deeper in my energy architecture video. You can go ahead and watch that. Take it from the clients through which I've been able to prove that this works. A lot of the work I do is in the sales space due to the nature and demands of sales, especially high ticket sales, but I was working with a high performing closer, consistently one of the top performers in revenue, but he kept missing his personal revenue targets. So he saw the team hitting all their numbers, but he was falling short of his own goals consistently. And yes, he holds himself to an exceptionally high standard, but despite that, the pattern was that he would always start the week off really strong, come out swinging, and then by around Thursday, he would start to stall out. And so when we started to dive in together, what we unpacked is that his goals were revenue based, but the real deep operating value as to why he was doing what he was doing wasn't just to have the most revenue, to say he had the most revenue. No, it was around his relationship quality and all the reasons why being a high performing closer allowed him to have a deepened relationship. And he had been so driven to come out swinging Monday through Wednesday, balls to the wall, nonstop grind, trying to hit those revenue numbers, that it led to a ton of friction in his relationship. And so every Thursday, all of the relationship friction that built up and accumulated throughout the week was enough to drain the true underlying motivation behind the numbers only goals that he was setting. And so the work that we had to do together was not changing the goals. The goals are good. Revenue you can measure. Measurable goals are good. But what we had to do is we needed to reconnect them to the relationship values that actually drove him, so he didn't lose sight of that throughout the week. And once those goals were anchored to both the revenue outcome and the relationship quality that he wanted, those Thursday stalls disappeared. And he was even able to jump in on his Saturday calls whenever he wanted to take extra calls. And so that left him from being an average closer at around a 25-30% close rate, making under 10K a month, to being able to make 20 to 30K a month consistently and being able to actually enjoy the fruits of his labor and reinvest in his relationship. So that's just one example of how actions can be shifted when they're aligned. And so if you want to see how your action consistency scores across the full performance system, the Clear Diagnostic, it's linked right below this video. It takes about 4 minutes and it shows you exactly which dimension is creating limitations for you. As you think about going to do that, I want to leave you with 3 specific reflection questions that I need you to think about and actually take action on. The first is, where in your week do you find that your execution most consistently breaks down? Where are you stalling out the most? Is it the same day, same type of task, same emotional conditions? Start to recognize those patterns. And if the answer is yes to any of those, then you have a pattern that's worth mapping out, because what can be measured can be changed. Second thing is, I need you to think about the last goal that you were really set on but then ended up abandoning. Was the goal wrong itself, or was it kind of disconnected from something that actually matters to you at an identity level, to where you started to feel friction as to, oh, well, why am I doing this? And you started to negotiate with yourself. What was that last goal? Take some time to write that down. The third is, think about how often you approach your most important tasks in a state that is actually equipped to handle them. Or are you showing up completely depleted and then calling it a discipline problem, kicking yourself and depleting even more energy, calling yourself a lazy piece of shit? If you can just get clear and at least bring that to a level of consciousness for all those 3 questions, that'll give you some tangible answers to take action on as well. All of this is the A in my clear framework. What makes it one of the most revealing dimensions is that once you map those patterns that we're just talking about, it's almost always going to point back to one of the other 4 dimensions as a root cause as well. And so it's worth taking the time to understand those patterns, because the gap between intention and execution, again, despite what anyone wants to say, it's not a discipline problem. It's you simply not having ways to measure things. It's a diagnostic problem. You cannot close a gap that you haven't accurately measured. Once you know where your pattern breaks down and why, you stop fighting yourself. You stop feeling guilty. You stop scrolling on Instagram looking for motivational reels and discipline this and grind this and hustle that, and you start building around the truth of how you actually operate on a psychological level, on a cognitive level, on an identity, personality level. And so if you know that you need to work on this directly, anything in this video that I said hit the nail on the head and resonated with you, the link to apply to work with me is right below, first link in the description. Fill that out. You'll be able to schedule a call where we will dive in a full coaching session. And if you'd rather measure your full performance system first, the Clear Diagnostic is right under there as well. Again, you'll receive personalized feedback according to your score. But either way, the next step is in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.